Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. It's a story about being replaced quietly, while you're still holding the door open for someone who's already halfway through another. And the worst part? She didn't even try to lie well. She left the stove on. That's how it started. I came home from work, stepped into the kitchen, and the pan was still hot. Flames low, eggs burned to the center. My wife wasn't there. Her phone was charging on the counter, screen lit up with a message that popped up right in front of me. 8 p.m. sharp. You better wear that dress I like. Winky face. I froze. Not because of the message. Not even because of the winky face. I froze because the name on the screen wasn't saved. Just a number. And I knew immediately what that meant. See, when someone is just a coworker or an old friend, they get a name in your phone. But a number? That's someone you don't want anyone to ask about. I didn't even touch the phone. I just sat down in the silence, letting the smell of scorched eggs and betrayal fill the room. 30 minutes later, she walked in, heels in one hand, a white shopping bag in the other, laughing to herself like she'd just won a bet. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw me sitting there. Just slightly. "Oh, you're home early," she said. "I live here," I replied. My voice sounded foreign. Finn. She gave me that impatient look. "Don't be dramatic. I'm just going out for dinner." "With who?" Pause. "Friends." Longer pause. "Friends don't send smiley faces and ask for dresses," I said. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just dropped the bag on the table and started kicking off her shoes. "Greg, it's just one night. One harmless night. I'll make it up later." That phrase, that was the sentence that rang in my head all night like a fire alarm I couldn't silence. I'll make it up later. 12 years of marriage. 12 years of loyalty, of quietly doing dishes when she forgot, of putting up with her mother's comments, of building a home brick by brick with words like patience and compromise. And now, she was cashing all that in for one night in a dress I hadn't seen in 3 years. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "Don't do something you'll regret." She didn't even answer. She just walked into the bedroom, humming. 10 minutes later, she left. I didn't follow. I didn't call. I just sat there, staring at the shopping bag on the table. Inside it, the receipt was still visible. 2 items, perfume and champagne. That's when I realized I wasn't losing her. I'd already lost her. And she never even said goodbye. The next morning, I didn't sleep. Not really. I just lay there on the couch, pretending the walls didn't feel like they were folding inward. Every sound felt sharp, like the tick of the thermostat, the occasional hum of the fridge, the wind brushing against the windows. But I didn't hear her come home. At all. She must have been quiet. Or maybe I finally blacked out sometime after 3 a.m. Either way, when I woke up around 7, she was already in the shower like it was a normal day. She walked out in her robe, towel on her head, humming. She kissed my forehead like I was some frail old man in a hospital bed and said, "I've got an early meeting. Can you feed the dog?" Then she grabbed her keys and walked out. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Not even guilt. Just a kiss and a to-do list. I stood there, still half asleep, looking at the empty coffee pot, and something in me snapped. Not in a rage kind of way. I'm not that type. It was quieter, colder, like someone flipping a switch and realizing the room was never lit to begin with. I went to her car. Not something I'd normally do. I've never gone through her stuff. But that morning, I felt like a ghost living in someone else's life, and I needed to know why. I opened the passenger door slowly. Nothing looked unusual. Just the usual mess. Reusable shopping bags, a pair of flats, some receipts. But when I opened the glove box, a small white envelope slid forward. It wasn't sealed. No address. Just a folded note inside. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a printed reservation confirmation for a hotel downtown, one we stayed in years ago on our anniversary. Right under that, a handwritten note in blue ink. Not hers. "Thank you for last night. Room 812 was definitely worth the wait. Can't stop thinking about you." No name. Just that. The room blurred. I had to sit back in the driver's seat. My breathing got shallow. My head felt light. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it wasn't hers. Maybe it was old. But the date, right there on the printout, was last night. I wanted to scream, to punch the steering wheel. But instead, I just sat there shaking. I felt pathetic. Weak. Like some extra in my own marriage. A placeholder. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I put everything back exactly the way I found it. Closed the door. Walked back into the house. Fed the dog. Made myself coffee. Sat at the table, sipping it like everything was fine. Because I needed to plan my next move, not emotionally, but surgically. If she thought I was going to break down and beg, she didn't know me at all. That envelope changed everything. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was proof, evidence, tangible reality that my marriage was no longer a partnership. It was a performance. And I had just decided to stop playing my role. That afternoon, I acted like nothing had happened. I greeted her when she returned from work, asked her how her meeting went, and even offered to reheat some leftover pasta. She was polite, even slightly warm, like she was trying to reestablish something, but not because she cared. It felt rehearsed, like watching a bad actress try to play a role she no longer respected. I nodded through it all, smiled where expected, and kept the truth tucked behind my teeth like a blade. Because now, I had a plan. She mentioned she was going to visit her sister that weekend. Said she needed a break. That word again, break. Like she was taking a vacation from being married, from accountability, from me. She packed a small bag Friday evening and hummed while folding her clothes. I leaned on the doorframe, sipping a glass of water, watching her move around the room with a strange calmness, like she was preparing for a trip to paradise while I stood on a sinking ship. "You sure you don't want me to drop you off?" I asked, tone light. No. Melissa's picking me up," she said, zipping the bag closed. Melissa, the same sister who posted 3 photos that day from a hiking trail 3 hours away. I nodded and told her to have fun. No confrontation, no suspicion, just support. Exactly what she expected from the man she believed was too soft to push back. I waited until she left. 10 minutes later, I grabbed my keys and followed. Not closely, I'm not stupid. I left enough distance that she wouldn't notice, but I knew where she was headed. I'd guessed it the moment she mentioned her sister. That hotel, room 812. The note hadn't lied. I parked across the street and waited. I saw her car pull into the garage entrance. She didn't even hesitate, just drove in like she belonged there, like she'd done it before. I sat in my car, engine off, hands clenched around the steering wheel so tight I thought I'd snap it in two. She was cheating, not emotionally, not accidentally. This was planned, routine. I didn't go inside. I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready yet. Instead, I went home, pulled out my old laptop, and opened a fresh document. I started typing. Not a letter, not a confession, a timeline. Every detail I could remember from the past few months. Late nights, sudden errands, outfits she hadn't worn in years, arguments that came from nowhere. I documented everything. I created folders, screenshots, photos of the envelope, metadata timestamps. It wasn't about revenge. It was about finally waking up. That night, I lay in bed alone, staring at the ceiling, listening to the emptiness. I realized something brutal. I'd been the only one fighting for this marriage for a very long time. She had checked out long ago. She just didn't bother turning off the lights on her way out. I was done waiting for her to remember who we used to be. Now, she was going to remember what it feels like to be underestimated by someone she thought would never leave. She walked through the front door Sunday evening, just after 6 p.m., keys jingling like it was any other day. The familiar sound of her heels on the hardwood used to comfort me. Now it made my chest feel tight, like my ribs were shrinking. I stayed in the kitchen, back to the door, stirring a pot of soup I had no intention of eating. When she stepped in, she announced, "I'm home," with that same chipper tone you'd expect from someone who just got a facial or won a small lottery. I turned slowly and smiled. "Welcome back. Did your sister enjoy your visit?" She paused, not enough to admit guilt, just enough to register that I was checking. "Yeah, it was chill. We just stayed in mostly. Watched movies. Talked. You know how Melissa is." I nodded. Funny. I thought she was still camping in Big Ridge. Her body stiffened. Just slightly, but enough for me to catch it. "She came back early," she said quickly. "Got bored. We didn't post anything." "Yeah, I noticed," I said, walking past her with the ladle still in my hand. Totally silent online. Weird for her. She followed me into the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She was either an excellent liar or thought I was too weak to ever confront her. That's the thing about people who cheat. They often don't even bother covering their tracks until you show them you're not as blind as they think. Dinner was quiet. I asked about work. She asked about the dog. I told her I started journaling again, and she gave a half-hearted, "That's nice," without asking why. She didn't notice anything missing until she opened the bedroom closet the next morning. I was in the hallway, pretending to scroll my phone, when I heard the rustle of hangers stop. Then a long pause. Then her voice. "Greg?" she called out, suddenly unsure. "Did you move something?" I walked in casually. "What do you mean? My red coat is gone. And my black heels. And, wait, where's the blue box? The one on the shelf?" I shrugged. "Oh, that stuff? I put it in storage." She blinked. "Why?" "Just clearing out clutter," I said, sipping my coffee. "Trying to make space. Mentally and physically." Her eyes narrowed. "You went through my stuff?" I smiled. "You went through us." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she scoffed, turned around, and muttered, overreacting as usual. But I saw it. That flicker of panic. She knew I'd found something. She just didn't know what. What she didn't realize was that I'd made copies, digital and physical, of everything in that blue box. A love letter, a printed hotel receipt with her name and signature, and a tiny bracelet I hadn't seen in years. It had initials on it. Not mine. Not hers. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't confused. I was methodically removing myself from the script of her life, step by step. And she was starting to realize it. By Tuesday, she came home early, cooked dinner, lit candles, tried to be charming. I played along, laughed at the right moments, told her she looked beautiful because she did. But all of it was a show, a final performance before curtain close. I wasn't staying. She just didn't know it yet. By Thursday, I had rehearsed what I was going to say about 100 times. In the mirror, in the car, even under my breath in the grocery store aisle. I imagined anger, tears, apologies, excuses. But none of those things came close to what actually happened. That night, I waited until after dinner. She had made salmon, my favorite, supposedly, and lit a vanilla candle in the center of the table like that alone could cleanse what she'd done. She smiled too much. Her eyes darted too often. Her wine glass emptied too fast. I kept the conversation light. Work, weekend plans, even asked about her mom. All of it led to this moment, to the thing I had been holding like a live wire against my ribs. When she got up to put the dishes away, I reached under the table and pulled out a simple manila folder. I placed it on the table, right in her line of sight. She glanced at it. "What's that?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her until she reluctantly sat back down. I opened the folder and slowly spread out the contents. First, the printed hotel reservation with her signature. Then, the envelope I found in her car with the handwritten note. And finally, a photo I took of the bracelet, zoomed in on the initials, A+M. She stared at it. Didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared. "You don't even have the decency to be original," I said, my voice calm, dead quiet. "Same hotel we used to celebrate our 5th anniversary. Same bracelet you said you lost in the lake." Her hands stayed folded in her lap. No tears. No denial. "I could have taken this to a lawyer last week," I added. "I still might." Finally, she looked up and said the one thing I didn't expect. "So, what do you want me to say, Greg?" I blinked. "Excuse me. You want an apology? Fine. I'm sorry. It was a mistake. One night, I needed something different." One night. I laughed bitterly. "You've got a love note, a bracelet, a booking history. That's a whole affair, Marla." She sighed, like she was being inconvenienced. "It doesn't change anything. We've been off for a while, you know that. You're always in your own world. I didn't plan for it to happen, but it did." "You wore my anniversary dress to meet him," I said, my voice breaking. That made her flinch, but only slightly. She picked up the bracelet photo and studied it like it was a stranger's medical scan. Then, she set it down and said with shocking clarity, "You think you're the only one who feels invisible? Do you even hear yourself? You're a walking cloud, Greg. Always anxious. Always doubting. I needed to feel like someone actually wanted me." That hit harder than any slap. "I did want you," I whispered. "I still do. But now I want honesty more." She leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. "So what? Are you leaving me?" "I haven't decided yet," I replied. "But I wanted you to see that I know. That I'm not as clueless as you think." She got up, walked out of the room, didn't slam a door, didn't yell, just walked. And I was left sitting there with a folder full of betrayal and a heart that didn't even know what to feel anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't relieved. I was just done pretending. The next few days were filled with a silence so dense it felt like insulation between us. She stayed on her side of the house, taking long showers, scrolling endlessly on her phone, occasionally pretending to read. I stayed on mine, sleeping in the guest room with the door half closed and a pillow that still smelled like bleach. We didn't fight. We didn't talk. We just coexisted like two strangers waiting out a storm that already passed through. I wasn't going to confront the other man. That wasn't part of my plan. He wasn't my problem, she was. But life has a funny way of handing you moments you never asked for. And mine came wrapped in awkward timing and a name tag. Monday afternoon, I had to stop by the mechanic to pick up my car. Marla had been using mine for weeks since hers was having issues. Issues I now knew were likely fabricated, just like her weekend trips to Melissa's. I walked into the auto shop, handed over the paperwork, and waited at the counter. That's when I heard someone behind me say, "Hey, you're Greg, right?" I turned slowly. He was taller than me, with that lazy kind of confidence you only get when the world's always handed you everything. Tanned, relaxed, wearing business casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. His smile was annoyingly familiar. The way you recognize a face from a dream you'd rather forget. "I'm Adam," he said, extending a hand. "Marla's friend. She mentioned you were her husband." His voice was friendly, casual, innocent. I shook his hand, and I'm not sure why. Maybe I needed to feel what it was like to touch the man who cracked open my life with a few careless nights in a hotel bed I once called ours. "She talks about you a lot," he continued. "Says you're super thoughtful. Smart. Smart." The word rang in my ears like a cruel joke. I nodded slowly. "So you two co-workers?" He smiled and rubbed the back of his neck. "Something like that. We met at that non-profit gala downtown a few months ago. Total coincidence. But we've hung out a few times since." Hung out. Like it was a movie night or a bowling league. "She's amazing," he added. "I mean, she's going through a lot, I think. But I'm glad she has someone like you to keep her grounded." My jaw tightened. I didn't say a word. I just smiled. Because clearly he didn't know. He thought I knew. He thought I approved. That's when it clicked. Marla hadn't told him the full story. She didn't tell him she was married and sneaking off. No. She must have painted herself as a separated woman, maybe even a victim of a cold marriage. And this idiot believed it. I nodded toward the lot. "So you and her, is that serious?" He laughed. "Oh man, no. Nothing like that. I mean, she's great, but we're just enjoying each other's company." She said she wasn't ready for anything complicated. Honestly, I think she still has feelings for someone else. He chuckled, not realizing I was that someone else. I almost pitied him. Almost. I didn't correct him. I didn't yell. I didn't punch him. I just let him talk himself into a hole he didn't even realize he was standing in. Then I shook his hand again, thanked him for the conversation, and walked back to my car. And as I drove off, I smiled. Not because anything was funny, but because now I knew exactly how I was going to end this, and it wouldn't involve shouting or drama. It would involve truth. Served cold, with no room for confusion. Friday night came fast. She had been quieter than usual all week, moving around the house like a ghost still trying to haunt the place it died in. I didn't push. I didn't ask where she was going, even though I saw the extra effort she put into her makeup. She wore the same perfume from the night she walked out and told me she'd make it up later. That phrase had turned into a siren in my mind. A warning. A curse. At 7:12 p.m., she stepped into the hallway in a slim black dress and boots she hadn't worn in years. I looked up from the couch and didn't say a word. I just stared. She avoided eye contact, grabbed her purse. Then, as if obligated by some silent script, she said, "I won't be too late." I stood up, walked to the door, and held it open for her. She blinked, surprised. "You're letting me go?" she asked. I gave a small nod. "You said you needed freedom, right? I'm not holding you hostage." She hesitated for the briefest moment, like she wasn't sure if this was a trap. Then she gave a short, tight smile and walked past me without another word. When the door shut, I exhaled slowly. Then I walked upstairs, opened the closet, and pulled out the small black suitcase I'd hidden behind the winter coats. It was already packed. Just the essentials: clothes, laptop, hard drive, the original documents, and the printed timeline. I even included a printed letter I had written and rewritten too many times. Not emotional, just facts. But here's the part that made my skin crawl. I didn't just leave. I left everything behind. I emptied our joint accounts earlier that week. I had opened new ones in my name, moved my direct deposit, canceled my cards, and froze the ones she still had access to. I left the keys to the house in the top drawer of her vanity with a note that read, "It's all yours now. Every room where you lied." I didn't leave through the front door. I went out the back, into the alley, and walked 4 blocks to where my friend Marcus waited in his truck. He didn't ask questions, just drove. We arrived at the storage unit. Everything was already there: photos, documents, my personal items. I had been moving them slowly, one bag at a time, over the past 2 weeks. She never noticed. She hadn't been paying attention for months. By the time midnight hit, I was checked into a long-term rental I'd found across the city under a different name. Clean, quiet, no memories, just 4 walls and silence that didn't lie to me. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Marla, 8:04 a.m. Where are you? Marla, 8:06 a.m. Greg, seriously, what is going on? Marla, 8:14 a.m. You moved out? Without even talking to me? Marla, 8:21 a.m. This is a joke, right? Marla, 8:39 a.m. Greg, the accounts are empty. What did you do? I didn't answer. I just forwarded her a PDF file titled Closure. Inside was everything. The photos, receipts, screenshots, her texts, the hotel invoice, the witness statement I asked Marcus to write after he saw her with Adam 2 weeks ago. A detailed timeline. Every lie. Every shift in her behavior. Every betrayal. At the end of the document, I wrote one final sentence. You wanted freedom. Now you've got it. She tried calling. I silenced it. Then, one final text. Marla, 9:17 a.m. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I stared at that message for a long time. The lack of remorse. The disbelief. Like she truly thought I was too weak to ever walk away. She didn't cry. But I did. Not because I missed her, but because I had stayed so long with someone who thought I wouldn't notice. 2 weeks have passed since I walked away, and for the first time in years, I don't wake up with a knot in my chest. My new place is small, just a studio with a creaky floor, mismatched blinds, and a kitchen that barely fits a coffee maker. But it's mine. No secrets in the closet. No perfume that doesn't belong. No half-hearted apologies over candlelight. Just silence. Honest silence. Marla tried reaching out again. A voicemail here. An email there. Most of it was confusion. Then guilt. Then, eventually, desperation. She even tried to send me a video message saying she didn't know what she was thinking, and maybe we both made mistakes. But the strange part is, I didn't feel anger. Or even pain. I felt nothing. She gambled everything on the belief that I would always stay. That I'd keep playing the part of the devoted husband no matter how far she wandered. And maybe, for a while, she was right. But people break in silence, not in storms. And when I broke, I didn't scream, I simply disappeared. I saw Adam again, by chance a few days ago. He looked nervous when he recognized me at the gas station. Asked if everything was cool. I smiled, told him not to worry. Told him the truth was already out, and that he was welcome to what was left of her. He blinked like I'd handed him a grenade. I walked away before he could say another word. As for me, I've started over. I read more. Sleep better. I've even picked up running again, something I haven't done since our 2nd anniversary. Turns out, moving forward isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about deciding that you deserve better, even if the other person never said sorry. Sometimes, you don't get closure with someone else. You just build it quietly with yourself. So, if you're still listening, thanks. It wasn't easy to tell this story, but maybe someone out there needed to hear it. Have you ever seen the signs before the betrayal, but stayed anyway? What would you have done after finding that envelope? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, you're watching Reddit Confessions.